Welcome back, guys. This is Building a Million, one day at a time. So this weekend I was able to enroll in the Grant Cardone 10X program. And if you don't know who Grant Cardone is, I learned who he was back in about 2015 when doing door-to-door sales. I was trying to learn as much as possible about selling. And I came across his book, Sell or Be Sold. And that's where I first learned who Grant Cardone was. I learned quite a bit from that book. Biggest thing I learned is people that come from nothing tend to have a drive that others don't. And that's something that I had starting out as a young kid. I remember my first job was selling plums on the corner, and I just was an entrepreneur. I wanted to make money, and I saw an opportunity. Neighbor's backyard, it was an old lady that couldn't go out and pick her plums, so all the plums just fell on the ground. So I picked them all up in a 5-gallon bucket, hauled them down to the corner, washed them off, and I sold them for a penny a piece. And that was kind of how I started, and it kind of resonated with me, his story. If you don't know who Grant Cardone is, he's a multimillionaire that has ties in real estate, has done a lot of sales for different big companies. But what resonated with me was how he started. He was, in his early 20s working on the docks, and he would wait for boats to come in so he could guide the boats into the dock. And while he was sitting there, he would just think of, I need to make more than $10 an hour doing this job, which is something I've thought about in my life too. I saw that the fishermen that were coming in would sell as much fish as they could, but at the end of the day, they would just throw away the fish that they didn't sell. And so he would buy that fish from them for super cheap. And again, this is fresh caught that day fish. And he would go door to door and sell that fish at a discount and make a huge profit. It reminds me of, doing the same thing, just looking for that opportunity to get started, right? And he was making more money in a night than he would in a week guiding boats. And so that's kind of what kicked off his sales process. And then he learned as much as he possibly could. But so he held this conference this weekend. It was a 4-hour conference. I only went through 2 hours of it. I was really there for one of the speakers, and that was Robert Herjavec, Sharks from Shark Tank. And I've always looked up to him. He came also from nothing and built this multi-million-dollar tech company that he sold. So I kind of want to go through some of the things that I learned this weekend from this conference, just to help you guys out in your process of growing and selling as well, and hopefully branching off into entrepreneurship. So a few of the things, Grant Cardone went over 5 things, and then he interviewed the speakers and asked them those 5 things as well. So the first thing was learn how to master money and the mindset of money. Okay, now this is important because when you think of the mindset of money, a lot of people are like, well, I got to have money to do what I want to do. And that's really to buy what they want to buy, spend that money on something that they want. I just had a student come up to me this weekend and say, hey, I want to buy this truck. How do I get a loan? And, I'm thinking, do you need a $12,000 truck? Is that the mindset that you want to have? Or would you like to save that money, maybe buy a cheaper car that gets good gas mileage, because trucks don't get good gas mileage, and at $4.50 a gallon right now, it's not the smartest purchase. And I thought, if you save that money by buying a cheaper car, and then when you can afford to pay cash instead of getting a loan, do it that way. So that mindset of money, it's the financial mental fix. So when you think of money, do you think of what that money can do for me, or what can I get with that money? And so once you can get over that mindset of how money works and how money can work for you, I guess you can start using that money the best way possible to benefit you versus just getting things that are going to end up not benefiting you at all. So that was number 1. Number 2, be a master of marketing. Okay. So when that comes down, market you and be able to market whatever you're doing. Okay. And so if you can become a master of that marketing or being able to gain revenue, then you opened up so many opportunities to make money, right? And that's one thing that I, again, was learning at a young age, selling plums or selling golf balls to the golfers that I'd find in the river. I was looking for many revenue streams so that I could grow in more than just one way. 3, get multiple streams of revenue, become a revenue monster. And that was, again, what I was trying to do. Build as many revenue streams as I possibly could so that I could be making as much money as possible. And I think about it even in today, like a lot of my videos are about side hustles. That's just different revenue streams. I've got the real estate. I'm currently employed as a high school teacher. I buy and sell things. I get things for free and flip them. So there's so many different types of revenue streams out there. Heck, I even DoorDashed, which I think is a great revenue stream if you have time and instead of sitting on the couch eating potato chips and watching TV, you could be out making money. One thing that is important is trying to get those revenue streams, as many as possible, branched out so you're making money from all different aspects. Number 4 was learn how to scale. So learn how to copy and paste those revenue streams, blow it up, get huge. If you're always just getting the one job, right? If you have that one job and that job's paying you at hourly or salary, that's one revenue stream, and you can't grow that way. You're always going to be in that, lower class. That was one thing that all 3 of these speakers that I'm going to talk about, Grant Cardone came from the lower middle class, Robert Herjavec came from the lower middle class, and Shaquille O'Neal came from the lower middle class. Now they all had the same kind of upbringing, but the difference was they decided to go out and hustle, right? Grind, learn as much as possible, be financially smart, learn from their mistakes, and they got to where they are at today. Again, they're all fairly wealthy, and they got there different ways. So those are the things that Grant Cardone talked about. Now, Robert Herjavec, again, this was the whole point of me going to this conference, is I wanted to hear him speak. He talked about the mindset of possibility. Knowledge is what sets you apart. Okay, so he said, basically, I came from nothing. My dad was a hard worker, but he was poor. And that's the thing is, he said, my dad is the hardest working person I've ever met in my life, and he was broke. And that's the mindset of, you have that one revenue source, you're always going to be broke because you're not going to ever get ahead that way. So he said, knowledge is what sets you apart if you're willing to learn new things, to be able to change, to be able to grow. If you do fail, learn from that mistake and learn to do it better. The second thing he said was, hard work is great, but hard workers don't become wealthy. You have to work hard and smart. So that's one thing is, a lot of people go out there and they're like, well, I want to get a good job and be able to support a family. That is awesome. And that is a really admirable something to aspire to. However, it's not going to get you ahead that way. If you have just that career, yeah, you can get a house with a 30-year mortgage and 2 cars with, 6-year auto loans on them and pay off your student loans. And then by the time you get to be 30 years into that career, your house is paid off, your cars are paid off, you've enjoyed a little bit here and there, and you're able to retire on a very, very minuscule retirement, which if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but you will never get out of that classification of the lower middle class. Second thing he said is find the right vehicle to wealth. There's so many different vehicles out there to wealth. Matter of fact, I've chose probably, well, I got lucky in choosing this one, but real estate is probably the best vehicle to wealth. Time and time again, it showed massive growth over time. And Robert said this even, he said, it's the greatest growth because you can put so little down and it can grow into so much more. That's one vehicle. There's so many different vehicles out there. Starting your own business can be a vehicle. Buying and selling things can be a vehicle. Rentals can be a vehicle. There's so many out there, but that's what he said. Find the right vehicle to wealth. And this is what I've always told people. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that is pretty much a myth. Now that does help in small towns. It's if you know somebody, you can get a job over somebody else, which I don't like that mindset, but it's true. But if you know how to do something, you can do that over and over again. If you can replicate that, then it doesn't matter who you know. You're going to use that number 2 thing of marketing and market yourself and what you know, and you can grow from there. That's what he did. He said he didn't know very many people, but he did know one thing, and that was technology, and he ran with it, and he became where he's at today. And then he said the other myth was you have to have money to make money. Again, that's not true. All 3 of them came from no money. I came from no money. got here on, my own hard work and knowledge with just the money that I brought into it, which was very little. And so, the myth you need money to make money is definitely a myth because of that, but it does help to have some money to get started. The third thing that he was talking about is people should invest in you, okay? So the more you market yourself, the more you get out there, the more you strive to show who you are, people will invest in you. What value can you add to them? You show them that, and they will want to invest in you. Marketing is leveraging yourself to a large scale. So he talked about leverage a lot. That's like buying real estate. You use a little bit of money and a lot of leverage to be able to buy a real estate deal, and then you can grow substantially from that. People want to be informed and entertained. That's what he talked about with things on like commercials and stuff like that. That's what he was talking about with Shark Tank. They want to be informed and entertained there. That way they can learn, because if you're not entertained and you're not being informative, then nobody's gonna stick around long enough to learn. Marketing is senior to sales. So I liked that thought process. He said, sales is the vehicle to get you to grow, but if you don't market, then your sales can only get you so far, because only you can sell, right? But if you can market to thousands and millions of people all at once, to where you can only sell one person at a time. So that was kind of a cool thought. I never thought of it that way. I did sales and I always thought, yeah, sales is the greatest way to go. But in this, he made a good point. Amplification, he kept using that. So Grant Cardone uses that term 10x. I'm going to 10x this. Robert Herjavec said, amplify. You can be able to amplify to have your work hard and grind at the beginning, and then you pivot at one point to empower people to work for you. And he said you can amplify that. You can't do everything if you're going to scale. And that's one thing where I'm at right now is I'm trying to continue to grow my real estate, but I'm trying to do everything myself. One of my last videos, I showed how to be a profitable landlord, and fixing things yourself so that you're not spending a ton of money on hiring somebody to do it. And the bigger you grow, the less you'll be able to do that. And so you're going to have to rely on other people to scale larger. And that's something I'm still learning and working on as I'm growing. The last thing he talked about with scale and leveraging was people overthink it. Discipline creates habits, and habits create success. I like that. He talked about, he runs 4 miles every day. He said he doesn't go with as long as 3 days without running. He's an older guy, and he looks great. And I think that's because of his success comes off of the disciplines that he's built and those habits that he's created, and he keeps them up to this day. And that's another thing is, I always thought, well, I'm going to work hard now so that I can retire and do nothing later. And as I'm getting older, I'm finding I don't think I would ever quit working. I'm going to always be doing something. I'm going to always be grinding, because those are the habits that I've been forming, and you can't just get rid of those habits of hard work and the mentality of just grinding away. So, if you can build those successful habits now, then they're going to benefit you over and over and over again. And that's one of those copy and pastes. Okay, so now after that, I want to kind of talk about Shaq. I didn't know much about Shaq. I thought I did. I knew he played for he played in Orlando. He played in LA. He's a big dude, basketball player, 7'2", 7'1", somewhere like that. But he talked about, when he was 18 years old, that's when he made his first $1 million. He signed on for the NBA. He got a $1 million bonus. Granted, he said he went out and bought a Mercedes-Benz, drove it home, and he got home and his dad was like, well, I want one. And he goes, let's go get one. And so he went down and he bought another one. And then he got home and his mom's like, well, I want one. So he went and bought another one for his mom. And he got, $400,000 in cars. And then he went out to Texas, and that's where he was going to be playing. And he bought, he paid $30,000 for a rental for the year. And he went out and bought some other bling and stuff like that. And he said his bank called him, and he went down and they were showing him, his bank statement. And he said, who the heck is FICA? And he said, taxes, he paid 25% in taxes, and he lost, $250,000, $300,000 in taxes. So realistically, that $1 million was only like $650,000, and he spent it all. And he said, I went from being a millionaire one day to being broke the next. And he goes, I had to learn really hard. And he said, that money mindset is trial and error. He said, you have to ask questions and you have to learn. That I really, admired that. He said the same thing that Robert said was that knowledge. He said, I didn't have it, but he said, I never made the same mistake twice. He said, I learned from those mistakes, and he said, I never did that again. So that was kind of cool, a learning experience. He said, take advantage of all opportunities. So he said when, after he learned that mistake, every opportunity that presented itself, he took it. So if it was an endorsement, a movie, a commercial, some sort of investment that someone brought to him, he said he didn't know everything. He knew he didn't know everything financially, so he would connect himself with smart, intelligent people that did know a lot more than him, and he would kind of ride their coattails into investments and stuff like that he was preparing for his future. He talked about getting into Google, and he talked about getting into Amazon early because he knew these smart people that knew that this was smart. Some other things he said was fear of being the next athlete to retire with nothing. He used this a couple times in his talk about 78% of athletes retire and are broke within 3 years, and he was terrified by that. And so he was trying to be as smart as possible and invest and just do the things that he thought were going to benefit him over time to where he is today. He's worth like $500 million. So I thought that was really interesting. Look at what you don't want. Be fearful of that. If you don't want to be in the lower middle class, don't be. Make sure that you're preparing not to be there, because if you don't, that's where you will end up. And then one of the last things, I just got a kick out of this because I mean, Shaq's a great, humble guy. You listen to him talk, he's quiet spoken, he's not very flashy. Well, so Grant Cardone asked him a question. He said, would you rather buy existing business or start one from scratch? And he said, I would prefer an existing business because I feel like I can turn around. And he talked about, he said there's a daycare down the street from him and he wants to buy it and take it over. And he said he could build a baseball field out back or a kickball field. He'd bring the kids cookies and ice cream. The main thing he said was kids need to be happy, and he can provide that and make the daycare successful. And Grant Cardone just said, you're an entrepreneur junkie. You're just always looking for the next business to help out, and that's the mentality you have to have. So, and the last thing that Shaq said is, I live by this rule: it could be worse, and I am blessed. And so if you look at that, you're trying to do something, and if you fail, just think it could be worse, and you're blessed, and you can learn from that mistake and continue on. So overall, the things that I learned were those things. Master your money mindset. Make sure that you understand how money works and how taxes work and everything like that, so you don't make that mistake that Shaq made, going from one day having $1 million to the next day being broke. Master the revenue game, marketing. Learn how to market yourself. Okay. That third thing, multiple streams of revenue, and the last one, learn how to scale, copy and paste those revenue streams. If you want to read the book from Grant Cardone, Sell or Be Sold, I highly recommend it. It's a great book. It got me, that first year of door-to-door sales, it got me to be able to understand the concept of that. And my sales process blew up because of it. I was able to be really successful, and I had never done door-to-door sales before. Appreciate you taking the time to go through this video with me. If you like the video, make sure you hit the like button down below. Subscribe. I post a new video every week about finance, businesses, different things like that in the how-to business sector. This is Building a Million, one day at a time. We'll catch you next time.